2, 3.
Get those IVs up!
And make sure our lines are packed.
Hey lovely viewers, welcome to our channel Grey's Anatomy Official. The 10 greatest Grey's Anatomy ships, ranked. Grey's Anatomy Season 22 is set to premiere on October 9th, 2025. From its very first episode, though, the series has been just as much a show about love, loss, and personal growth as it has been about life-or-death surgeries. Over the years, we have watched Grey Sloan Memorial navigate heartbreak, friendship, and romance against the backdrop of high-stakes operating rooms and emergency wards. It's almost impossible for an average viewer who hasn't followed the show wholly to consciously pick up the depth of all of those relationships. That's why I've put together a list of the greatest Grey's Anatomy ships, ranked, a perfect refresher for longtime fans and a quick catch-up for anyone who wants to revisit the show's most unforgettable romances. 10. Teddy and Henry. Teddy Altman, Kim Raver, and Henry Burton, Scott Foley were one of the most unexpected pairings on Grey's Anatomy, but their short-lived romance is one of the highlights of the show. When Teddy agreed to marry Henry on a whim, just so he could have her insurance and get surgery to treat his von Hippel-Lindau syndrome. What started out as a marriage of convenience for Henry quickly blossomed into a genuine friendship between these two. Honestly, Teddy really needed someone as grounded and normal as Henry to help her deal with all the chaos that surrounded her at Seattle Grace Mercy West Hospital. Unlike so many of Teddy's other relationships, Henry never wanted her to be anything but herself. She didn't have to prove her worth or shrink her ambition to be with him, and that's what made their relationship feel so real. Grey's Anatomy is known for its messy, complicated relationships. However, things between Teddy and Henry were always easy. Henry always brought out the best in the cardiothoracic surgeon and gave her the kind of safety that she had always wanted. Because their relationship was so happy, light, and carefree, Henry's sudden death remains one of the most heartbreaking moments on the show. It's a shame that we didn't get to see these two grow old with each other, because they really were perfect. 9. Bailey and Ben. Miranda Bailey, Chandra Wilson, is definitely a tough cookie to crack, but Ben Warren, Jason George, has proven time and again that he is the best man for the job. These two might just be the only couple on the show who have survived just about everything together, from traumatic hospital shootings to career shifts, health scares, and messy separations. However, the fact that they kept coming back to each other is all the proof you need to realize that they really are meant to be. These two crossed paths in Grey's Anatomy Season 6, where Ben immediately got on Bailey's nerves. However, you have to admire Ben for never flinching at Bailey's temper while continuing to respect her. What makes this ship so special is that they truly grow to understand each other. They aren't afraid to spend time apart and give each other space when life gets overwhelming. At the same time, they know exactly when to close the gap and fight for their relationship. One has to admit that this might be one of the most equal relationships on the show, because Ben and Bailey truly are partners in family and ambition. In a show where so many romances have crashed and burned, Bailey and Ben continue surviving Shondaland's worst curveballs. 8. Addison and Mark. This might be a bit of a controversial take, but Mark Sloan, Eric Dane, and Addison Montgomery, Kate Walsh, could have been the perfect endgame. There's no denying that their relationship starts on the worst note when Derek, Patrick Dempsey, catches them cheating with each other. However, what's interesting is how Mark and Addison's relationship evolved after the initial fallout. When Derek left for Seattle, they lived together for 2 months, and Addison even became pregnant with Mark's baby. Addison eventually chose to have an abortion and followed Derek to Seattle, but that's when Mark truly realized that he loved her. When the plastic surgeon arrived at Seattle Grace, he wasn't chasing a better job. He was there to win Addison back and prove himself worthy of her. Mark even went without sex for 60 days just to show Addie that he didn't want to be with anyone but her. Sadly, though, their timing was just never right. Not just that, but Addison and Mark could never really let go of the guilt they felt for betraying Derek. Still, you can't deny that Mark was a different man with Addison, and they were always on the same professional and emotional playing field. If Walsh's character hadn't left for Los Angeles to join private practice, Addison and Mark might have had a real shot. 7. Catherine and Richard. Richard Weber, James Pickens Jr., has been pretty unlucky in love, but the show finally gave him a sense of stability in his relationship with Catherine Fox, Debbie Allen. Catherine first appeared on Grey's Anatomy Season 8, when Richard was slowly losing his wife, Adele Loretta Devine, to Alzheimer's. Now, his dynamic with Catherine was flirty right from the start, but the chief wanted to do right by his wife, even if she had completely forgotten who he was. In fact, when Adele passed away, Weber did everything in his power to push Catherine away. However, she stood by his side, and he eventually had to give in to his feelings for her. What makes this ship so special is that neither one of them was actively looking to fall in love. Richard had just about had enough of grand romances, and Catherine was more than happy to dedicate herself to her career. Now, since they met as two equally brilliant surgeons with complicated pasts, it's no surprise that they ended up finding solace in each other. Richard and Catherine's relationship is fiery and flawed because both of them are stubborn enough to drive the other mad. Then again, though, they always know when to apologize and fight for their marriage, and that is what has helped them deal with challenges such as Richard's alcoholism, Catherine's cancer diagnosis, and the constant professional power struggles. This ship is a refreshing contrast to Grey's Anatomy's typically younger romance, and proves that passion doesn't have to fade with age. 6. Christina and Burke. Christina Young, Sandra Oh, remains a Grey's Anatomy fan favorite years after her exit from the show. Her unapologetic ambition and brutal honesty made her one of the most compelling characters on the show. It was always evident that Christina lived for the oar, and if there was ever a man who understood what her career meant to her, it was Preston Burke, Isaiah Washington. Christina and Burke's relationship started on a professional note, but even then, Burke recognized and respected Christina's brilliance. Despite Burke being Christina's senior, they shared the same kind of love and obsession for cardiothoracic surgery, and their connection in the oar eventually turned into one of the most memorable relationships on the show. Of course, their love wasn't simple, and their power imbalance definitely came into play now and then, like that time Burke made Christina cover for him when he developed a hand tremor. Some argue that Burke wanted Christina to change for him, especially with that whole wedding storyline. However, the fact that he decided to walk away on their wedding day goes to show that he couldn't keep asking Christina to give up so much of herself to be with him. These two did get their full circle moment, though, when Burke returned to offer Christina his research institute in Zurich in Season 10. Not just that, but he also used the opportunity to tell her that his feelings for her never truly went away. Christina's relationship with Burke was passionate, complicated, and infuriating at times, but it helped shape her into the world-class surgeon that she is. 5. Arizona and Callie Torres, Sarah Ramirez, and Arizona Robbins, Jessica Capshaw, were the first actual LGBTQ+ couple on Grey's Anatomy and shared a natural chemistry that made them instant fan favorites. The two met right after Erica Hahn Brooke Smith left Callie high and dry, and from their very first kiss in the bathroom at Joe's bar, you couldn't help but root for them. Now, Callie and Arizona's journey was anything but smooth. These two loved each other, but communication wasn't exactly their strongest suit. Whether it was their disagreement over wanting children or Arizona's objection to Mark and Callie's extremely close friendship, their relationship was a roller coaster ride. However, their love always outlasted every hurdle that came their way. Calzona's beautiful wedding, officiated by Bailey, with Mark walking Callie down the aisle, remains one of the most heartfelt moments on the show. However, love is never simple on Grey's Anatomy, and Calzona was never really the same after the plane crash in Season 8. Arizona cheating on Callie with Lauren, Hillary Burton Morgan, was the final nail in the coffin, because even therapy couldn't mend their broken dynamic after that. What followed was an ugly custody battle over Sophia, Eva Ariel Binder, one of the most painful storylines for these two women who once meant everything to each other. In the end, however, Calzona's story came full circle in Season 14 when Arizona decided to move to New York for Sophia, and an open-ended text from a newly single Callie hinted at the possibility of them getting back together. It wasn't the picture-perfect ending that fans had envisioned for the ship, but it was good enough. 4. Joe and Alex Karev, Justin Chambers, had a string of complicated, failed romances on Grey's Anatomy. Many believe that his relationship with Izzy, Katherine Heigl, has always been the great love of Alex's life, but what he shared with Joe, Camilla Luddington, was far more special than that. Alex easily had one of the greatest redemption arcs on the show, and his relationship with Joe had a lot to do with that. Their connection was a slow burn, but as two damaged people with very similar childhood traumas, it was only natural for them to develop a deep friendship. Joe was one of the very few people Alex could open up to without the fear of being judged. However, in true evil spawn fashion, he tried his best to avoid any feelings he had for her. When these two finally came clean about their love for each other, though, their relationship grew into one of Grey's Anatomy's greatest, most stable romances. What's so great about Joe is that she accepted Alex for who he was, and in turn, that inspired him to want to be better for her. Their journey obviously came with its ups and downs, so when they got married, I just wanted them to live happily ever after. Unfortunately, that never happened since Izzy eventually came back into Alex's life, and he chose to leave Joe to be with her and raise their secret kids. This storyline felt like a gut punch since it was so out of character for Alex, especially after he had fought so hard to build a safe, loving life with Joe. The fact that they didn't even say goodbye to each other in person feels like a total disservice to their epic love story, and that really makes me believe Jolex is the ship that got away. 3. April and Jackson Avery, Jesse Williams, and April Kepner's Sarah Drew story will go down in history as one of the greatest friends-to-lovers arcs of all time. There's no denying that their relationship was a slow burn, but it was so worth the wait. When these two first arrived at Seattle Grace Mercy West in Season 6, there was nothing even remotely romantic about their dynamic. If anything, they were close friends who just had plenty of shared losses to bond over. Season 7 continued this dynamic as the two moved into Meredith's house and slowly started growing closer as friends. However, since Jackson was dating Lexi Kyler Lee at the time, his connection with April remained strictly platonic. Things changed by the end of Season 8 when April sleeps with Jackson. What was meant to be a casual one-time hookup obviously turned into something much deeper, but their differences in faith and a pregnancy scare, and the heartbreaking death of their son, Samuel, tore their marriage apart. Despite the very obvious love these two had for each other, their timing just never seemed to work out. Thankfully, though, Japril got their fairy tale ending in the end when April decided to follow Jackson to Boston as he ran his family's foundation. The Grey's Anatomy Season 18 finale was the perfect closure for the fans who finally got to see Jackson and April back together as they shared a much-awaited kiss in the elevator. 2. Lexi and Mark. Mark and Lexi were another completely unexpected pairing in Grey's Anatomy, but once they were together, they just made sense. Of course, their relationship was complicated from the start, with the major age gap and the fact that Derek did not want his sister-in-law sleeping with his best friend. However, soon enough, everyone started to realize that their connection went far beyond sexual attraction. Mark was a different man with Addison, but he went through a total transformation with Lexi. Being with Lexi made Mark want to leave his philandering ways and settle down for good. However, Lexi was still a young resident at the time, and she just wasn't ready for that kind of commitment, despite being hopelessly in love with him. From the arrival of Mark's pregnant teenage daughter, Sloane Laven Rambin, to Callie and Mark having a baby together, Lexi was constantly overwhelmed by the different trajectories they were on. There's no denying that these two hurt each other more than once. They failed to communicate their feelings for each other, moved on with other people, and tried to let each other go when they knew they didn't really want to. It's a shame that we barely get to see Mark and Lexi as a couple before they meet their tragic end following the plane crash in Season 8. However, in those final moments, Mark and Lexi finally come clean about their feelings and admit that they are each other's great loves. Their romance remains one of the most romantic yet heartbreaking storylines in Grey's Anatomy. 1. Meredith and Derek. Meredith Grey, Ellen Pompeo, and Derek Shepherd's love story is the emotional backbone of Grey's Anatomy. Their seemingly casual one-night stand in Season 1 evolved into one of TV's most iconic relationships. The chemistry between these two was downright magnetic from the start. Their playful banter and intense pull toward each other were the heart of the show in its early seasons. Of course, it all came crashing down in the Season 1 finale when Addison came to town and revealed that Derek had been married to her all along. This led to a long, heartbreaking push-and-pull dynamic where Meredith tried to get over each other while knowing that it was impossible to do so. Once they finally got together, though, their relationship matured beautifully. Sure, their ambitions often collided with each other, and that clinical trial arc, along with Zola's adoption, nearly destroyed their marriage. However, What mattered was that they kept choosing each other through all of it. Derek helped Meredith get over her abandonment issues, and Meredith taught him patience and humility in turn. Their love story wasn't perfect, but it changed both of them for the better. It's a shame that by the time they resolved the issues in their marriage and Derek headed home to be with his family, he was met with the tragic accident that took his life. Meredith eventually moved on and opened herself up to love again, but it's obvious that no one else can ever live up to what she had with Derek. Thanks for watching this video. Please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up.